Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. My name is Chris Rainey, co-founder here at HR Leaders, and I'll be your host for today's live panel discussion, where we're going to be talking about how to empower your workforce with strategies that promote employee well-being and resilience. With that being said, today, I have the amazing privilege of taking a back seat as a moderator. So we're going to hand you over to our good friend that many of you know, we've been on many of these sessions before, Bernie Knobbe, who's the Senior Vice President of Global Benefits and Wellbeing at Aecon. Bernie, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you so much. And welcome to everyone that's on the call. I've had the privilege, honor, and really just fortunate opportunity to be a part of HR events sponsored here in the past. And we've got a great panel today, and you're not here to hear from me, you're here to hear from them, as you've heard from me before. And I'll certainly comment if necessary, but this is really about the sharing of stories and hopefully providing some aha moments, as I call them, as you walk away today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the panelists and introduce them. And I'm going to do it just by who I see on my camera and screen here. So Nadine, you're first, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Nadine. I'm based in Germany, and I am leading Wellbeing and Workplace for Coca-Cola Europe Pacific Partners.
Great. Welcome. Thank you for joining today. Pascale?
Hello, everyone. My name is Pascale Thomas, and I'm based in the US. I'm the Vice President of Employee Benefits and Wellbeing for the Walt Disney Company.
I've heard of them. Okay, Dana, you're next.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. I'm Dana Hurst. I am the Director of Wellness for BGIS. We are a global facilities management organization, and I'm based in Toronto, Canada.
This truly is global well-being. Love that. Okay, and Behar, I love your logo there in the corner, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, Barney. Thank you for having me. My name is Bahar Oskan. I look after global well-being for Concentrix for 6 regions, 70 countries, and I am based out of Miami, Florida.
And last, but certainly not least, hi, Althea. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Bernie. Great to see you. Alethea Vara. I am our SVP over clinical care here at Lyra Health, and I'm based here in the US.
Wonderful. Wonder if you painted any of those in the background. Those are great. Anyway, okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And actually, I didn't do this on purpose, so it worked out well. Althea, you're going to get the first question here. So as you think about holistic approaches around well-being, what have you done within your organization to help employees adapt to some of those mental health and, as we call it, emotional well-being challenges that you're facing today and that your employees and dependents are facing as well?
Yeah, I think we have approached this in a couple of ways. The first way is just to make sure that everything is very simple, to make sure that we're reducing the number of transitions, reducing the number of barriers. We have found that anytime you have to transfer somebody from one service to another, or make a referral from one provider to another, or even just redirect them to a different website, you lose a number of people in that transition. And so making sure that there's no wrong door, that they can get to what they need the very first time, is incredibly important, and making sure that whatever that service is, that they can get the full spectrum of care needs met. And so that may mean just more preventative needs. Say they are interested in something like mindfulness, or they're interested in working on their sleep or something like that. It may mean coaching just to improve their performance or their relationships. It may mean therapy or meds. Or we also have made sure that we can really address those complex care needs, things like substance use disorders or eating disorders or trauma. These are all pieces that, everybody comes to us with very different needs, and they don't always know exactly the right place. So we want to make sure that we take all the work off their hands, that there's no wrong front door. They just land with us. We'll help shepherd them to the right level of care, but also the right provider. We have a amazingly cool AI matching tool that we use that will help them to get to the provider that is going to be most effective for them as an individual. And really, when it comes down to it, we just want to make sure, again, that we do all the work, that they don't have to make more than one phone call, and that they get the right care that they need the very first time.
I like that one call. It's very much about the employee, right? Let's make this a good experience, because that's really what we're here to do. Nadine, how about yourself? What have you seen in relation to this aspect of well-being?
Yeah, I think I can echo what Athira has said, and especially in terms of communicating about the offerings. So we've kind of structured our communication around moments that matter, which we call it, and given people really practical life examples in which they could get support from all of our services, because sometimes people just can't imagine how far and how broad and holistic the services are. So, of course, with our EAP provider, we do provide life coachings, counselings, and also long-term therapy. What has worked really, really well for us is our Wellbeing First Aiders Network. So they did have more than 5,000 conversations last year with our employees. And we can actually see from the data that we have internally that our employees prefer to talk to someone internally, especially when it comes to work-related issues, which is a little bit different when it comes to kind of private issues. So this network of our Wellbeing First Aiders really helps to shape the culture around mental health and to reduce stigma. They're very present in the countries. They're having very regular experience exchanges. And yeah, through that, we have a train the trainer concept. So that means we're really able to adapt everything to the local culture and across the globe, which has been very much appreciated, because mental health is something very different in Papua New Guinea than it is in Europe. And another thing that has worked really well for us is we used events where employees would go through a well-being assessment, and it would give them a specific result. And then we use that result to get people directly into life coachings or counselings if needed, because at that moment they were very open to, receive some kind of support and these things, and that worked really well. Yeah.
Sounds a little bit like our Mental Health Allies program last year, where you have local people that have gone through some sort of training. That's great. And the Moments That Matter is really good. We call them #wellbeing moments, but I like yours better. Is that trademarked, or can I use that in the future? Because that's really good. Moments That Matter. Dana, I saw you shaking your head a little bit. Do you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, I think what the two have covered, it really hits home in that, really looking at things holistically is where it's at, and looking at your diverse workforces. I think lots of the panelists are global here, and so it puts an extra layer or an extra challenge in there. But I think they covered it really well.
Behar, Pascale, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So we are heavily focusing on also that data analytics and voice of employees, and collaborating with different departments in order to correlate the information of well-being with some other metrics. It could be operational, maybe performance related, any kind of HR data, and creating some heat mapping in order to identify the early indicators to take the proper action. So I would definitely agree what all speakers actually said here, and I echo all, and also commenting on the importance of maybe early indicators. Every company have tons of data, which is very valuable. Just we sometimes don't know what to look at, how to look at. So I just wanted to add this data point of view to use that as a kind of indicator, as a heat mapping moving forward.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree with what all the panelists have said. And so the one thing that I would add is the importance of making sure that at least on the employer side, that when we're going out to the participants, that we are doing it in a way that resonates uniquely to them. As the panelists have said, mental health is not a one size fits all. And so leveraging the unparalleled power of storytelling, and we talked about moments that matter, but it's also around making sure that people understand how to approach this subject in a way that resonates uniquely to them. And so often we get mired into the linguistics around, clinical terms, et cetera. And so it's really important for folks to realize that, individuals who are in those conditions, particularly around mental health, often don't even recognize the sign. And so giving them a sense for being able to address those in everyday terms, like, I'm just feeling not so well, right? I could use some additional help. And that's what the type of things that we've done here is really leveraging storytelling to ensure that folks can resonate with the approach.
Yeah, and Pascale, on that storytelling note, I'm going to jump on that train because that's one thing that we found within our organization that has worked so well, that has been so successful in breaking down the stigma of mental health conditions in our organization. Storytelling is that, being human, it's such a powerful way to build connection. And we engage all of our senior leaders, our executives, including our global CEO, in our mental health storytelling. And it's through so many of our mental health initiatives throughout the year. So things like our Bell Let's Talk Day, which kind of kicks off our year, sets the tone for the year, to our CMHA Mental Health Week during the middle of the year. And then we've created our own BJS Global Mental Health Week in October. And all of these initiatives are where our leaders share authentically their stories about their experiences with mental illness. And it's through all of this sharing of experiences that gives, or maybe helps give others, like our team members, permission to share their experiences, and helps people understand that they're not alone. And so it really creates that psychologically safe space for our team members to feel comfortable to share. And we've actually had team members reach out to us following these initiatives saying, due to these initiatives and due to our leaders being vulnerable and sharing and hearing what others are saying, and then being able to reflect and say, oh, that actually sounds a lot like me. And they've said to us that these experiences have helped them reach out to get the help that they need. So we know that at the end of the day, being able to align, our story with another narrative, of someone within the organization, especially a leader, really helps to elicit, understanding and support from others. So I just want to jump on that because you mentioned storytelling, and that's been such a key, I would say, success piece or story for us at our organization when it comes to making it something that team members feel comfortable to speak about and to come forward about.
And Pascale, nobody does storytelling better than Disney. So it was good that you brought that up. But I'm curious as well around that stigma comment that was made. I mean, how are you addressing that? I think the executive presence, Dana, that you referenced is so important, right? And I also think it helps managers, because if they feel leaders are talking about it, then they as managers can do the same. So it sets a good example. But what have you been doing at Disney to help on that?
And I'm glad you mentioned it. Storytelling is aligned to our mission. It is part of our goal for the world. And what we found, especially after the pandemic, is that we had an organization that was so hyper-focused on the world at large. We have 229,000 employees in 70 plus regions, that in many cases, those individuals weren't thinking about themselves, right? It was all around how we could help support the world that we were all going through collective trauma. So it was truly important for us to come back with providing, as Dana mentioned, the ability for self-care and for people to take permission into addressing their own particular situations. Certainly leadership helped to foster that environment, but I will go a little bit further to talk, primarily around how we, through a number of our initiatives, try to demystify the concept of mental health with programs and resources, including things like Global Wellbeing Week, where we have an overall focus around well-being in general, but really started to articulate the whole concept of wellness to go well beyond the physical, but to include the physical, the financial, and the social, to recognize holistically that all of those things are integrated and that it each feed into each other in order to impact an individual's mental health. And if you remember what we went through over the last few years, there was a sense that we went at one point from a physical pandemic and COVID-19 to a psychological pandemic. And so we really wanted to take the time to actually look through that and see, well, how do we address it? How do we change the norms around how we speak about that concept? And also recognize that as much as we want leaders to model the behavior, we also have to recognize that leaders are not always equipped to start the conversation. Yet they were at the front line, right? We were putting the burden on them to go out there and to recognize that the volumes were increasing. And so it was really important for us to provide some high-level training around mental health and recognizing that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So that was one aspect of it. The other aspect also was to look around our policies and practices. And so it's no secret that, for years and years, while we've provided EAP at a high level, we've also considered certain manifestations of mental health at the workplace as being punitive, disruptive to the workplace. And so working closely with our employee relations group to really change the focus and the mindset to understand that how do you recognize the signs that this particular behavior is not just an individual being disruptive in the workplace, but perhaps the manifestation of something deeper, and providing the appropriate support for those individuals to go one step further, right? And to get the resources that they need so that they can get back to being their best selves in the workplace. Last but not least, recognizing that we needed to equip leaders just to start the conversations, to know what to say. We've just actually recently developed a leader's guide to emotional health, and it is a very plain language type of approach that provides individuals with conversation starters. What do you say and what do you not say? And importantly, how do you combat compassion fatigue as you have so many people come to you asking for help? And we recognize the sign on your own that you as a leader are perhaps burned out by the circumstances around you, and find ways to address your own mental health.
I really love the piece you said about demystifying it and really making it part of the normal conversation. I think we've done that with physical health and physical wellness and physical safety. We've created these cultures of safety and made sure that it's part of our just daily conversation, that we're thinking about this and talking about this. And we just have such an opportunity to do the same thing when it comes to our own mental wellness, and making sure that we're assessing regularly, that we're just talking about it as part of normal operations, so that we're not waiting for an incident, or we're not waiting for some sort of trigger or flag to intervene.
I would completely agree with you. And one of the things that we've done at our organization is actually integrate well-being and wellness into our health and safety function. Because previously the well-being function was under people and culture, which was great. But at our organization, safety is so ingrained in our DNA. It is such a part of our culture that we thought, let's capitalize on this. There's a lot of synergies between health and safety. And so by putting these two divisions or departments together, we're able to, exactly what you say, integrate that in with the physical. So it's now physical and psychological, and it's not something that team members, it's not foreign to them. It's a part of their toolbox talks for those of our team members that are on the front line. There's a psychological toolbox talk each month. So I think that that's really key. And you mentioned earlier too, language. I think language is so important, and looking at those policies and procedures and just how the language and how does it reflect both physical and psychological safety, and not just in the health and safety policies, but in all of your policies. So yeah, I would echo that. Great comment.
Just one more comment as well about storytelling piece and using leadership to break the stigma piece. Very important, because sometimes also we see senior leadership not picking up healthy habits and incorporate into their life. So when we are using them or getting their help for storytelling, it might be sometimes very performative too. So the first step also needs to be just let's highlight they also need some support from well-being departments and programs and well-being team members, and working with their executive assistants or their people solutions partners, HR partners, to, if needed be, from top-down level, even from CEO level or their management, to set up some break times in their calendars, or working with them to understand what type of strategies that they need and support that they need from well-being teams in order to lead by example. We shouldn't be probably missing and neglecting our senior executives, because they're really under huge pressure everywhere, especially with this economy going on in the world.
I really agree to what Dana has said as well on the health and safety piece and the benefits of working closely together. I think especially if you have a blue collar workers and a supply chain where, health and safety is usually much more embedded and integrated into the day-to-day business. There are huge benefits of doing that. So what we're doing since a couple of years is we're not running well-being campaigns, but it's always well-being and safety together. And within our communication campaigns, we're echoing the messagings and the headlines of each other. So we will be running a global well-being challenge in May, for example, that is very holistic, also helps a lot to work on the culture. It's not only about mental health, but also financial, social well-being, spiritual well-being. But we did also include some safety content in there so that for the employee, it's really one package and one topic, so to say, because I think often within HR, people and culture, we're overwhelming our employees a little bit with all of the different campaigns and communications and topics. And I think it's really good to try and streamline that a little bit and to agree with different functions and departments on what is it that we actually want to achieve, what is the message that we want to convey, and then try to create programs jointly together.
Yeah,
actually, it's great because I was going to say the same thing around what Dana said, that health and safety. Actually, we started out with safety moments. Now we have safety moments or well-being moments. You can pick which way you want to start out a meeting, but it feels more like a business initiative. Go ahead, Pascale.
Yes, so I was going to augment that, and I thought it was so spot on when you were talking about partnership with other parts of the business. It's so important, for us in HR to truly have a great handle on the diverse needs of our populations. And so many of you have talked about, the importance of safety. And so we have a mix within our organization, right? We have those, that are most familiar to you. We start with Mickey and Minnie at the parks, but we have all kinds of individuals within our overall portfolio, including, our news correspondents on the front line, right? Who are out there and sometimes putting their lives in danger so that they can bring us great content and great information. We have our Imagineers, our engineers who are constantly working on trying to come with innovations. And we have professionals, and it's a really diverse mix of individuals. And so when we start to talk about mental health, and we already know that mental health manifests itself in many different ways, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. But when you also add the added layer of a very different mix of individuals, it's really finding that sweet spot of what resonates for everyone, right? Which is difficult. And sometimes it just means that maybe we take a step back, right? So for example, in some of our functions is around looking at things that are common. How about research that says that you can lighten your life in general and create optimism through laughter? That's a commonality that you have, right? So having speakers who can speak to those kinds of common language things that translate to every layer of the population, talking about change and anxiety in general, right? So again, can speak to everyone, but then also knowing that in some instances, the very nature of the job also provokes different kind of aspects that we may want to address. And so we know that, we had to look at cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, to support some of our individuals in the news division, and support for individuals who are dealing with the loss of an animal, for animal health, for example, at the Animal Kingdom. We had to recognize that we had that kind of variety and diversity within our organization to try and provide solutions that were topical and relevant for each group.
Thank you. And diversity is important. And boy, animal, you got me there with being a dog lover. So anyway, thank you. So now we're going to think about globally. I mean, I think everyone on this panel operates in a global organization, and probably most of you on the call today are also facing that. And so maybe I'll start with Behar and just say, how have you dealt with those cultural differences? I mean, UK, Australia, some countries are very strong in how they deal with, certification around mental health and so forth. But in other parts of the world, it's a challenge. And so any thoughts on that?
Exactly. Thank you very much for asking this question. Very timely, because I look after a well-being function for a global company where we have 70 countries and we have 500,000 employees. You heard it right, it's 500,000 people all around the world. And as Pascale said, there is no one fit all support for anyone. We have to customize and tailor the approach based on the local needs. So each culture has their own nuances and communication styles. Their attitudes are different, their values are different, right? So all this even reflect this up in language usage and how they reach out to resources. So one example is from our France team. We have a great team in France. And the other day they were saying, can you please just don't bother yourself sending me well-being messages or emails in English? I'm not opening the email in English. So I just want to read everything in French. This is not from a cultural point of view only. They read the air very well. So not only French, very high context culture. They know reading the air. They want the actual nuances. They want humor. Some cultures actually want more relational trust building, right? Everything in terms of communication might be very different one place to another. So our responsibility is reading the air very well and these needs very well to, as I mentioned before, it could be either heat mapping or doing listening circles or doing more proper, robust assessments. Because what we figured is even complexity in culture and diversity reflects itself in bias in assessments too. We can do surveys all around the world, but we can see false positive replies in some countries or false negative replies in certain countries. So how are we going to make the assessment methodology more robust have been our step one since we launched our program in Concentrics. That's why more listening, bringing more voice of employees, looking at different correlations all around the world in order to bring localized approach and maybe even behavioral mapping and more clients and also employee storytelling locally needs to be implemented in place. And also what we figured is we talked about cognitive behavioral therapy, different therapy techniques, even receiving therapy techniques are different. We figured some individuals actually they prefer and they feel more comfortable in group settings. Some of our employees, they prefer actually more one-on-one and they want to focus on their own well-being journey, just using a mental health app, or they don't want to be even heard or listened by anyone. They just want to be in their own bubble and do their own planning. Totally, we respect everybody's expectations, but it's the matter of understanding different expectations in that sense. But I have to mention here, I never saw these actually differences and nuances as challenges. I think this is such a gift, working in a global organization and seeing and witnessing different type of behaviors, approach, and nuances. That helps you to open your heart and your approach to differences and different needs and expectations, right? What I like to mention here is how we cope with that challenges a little bit is getting some help from management and putting well-being, anything, communication, new launch programs in business meetings to strategize locally. What should be the communication plan look like locally in that country? Or what should be the engagement plan look like in that country? Because what you come as a program level global at, it wouldn't reflect or land in as you anticipate, right? You need to just think about culturally how you are going to make this program or communication methodology proper for this location is the question for everyone that we are asking with the teams that we are working with.
Yeah, I would. I really appreciate what you said about it being a gift, Bahar, because I do think it is a gift that we have so much that we can learn from each other and so much that we can learn from the different approaches and the different viewpoints globally. You know, we talk about it as delivering global care hyper locally, and it is important to know that partially. You know, Bernie, what you mentioned, there are so many differences in terms of certifications and who can call themselves a psychologist in one country versus another, and how much training that entails and what that training consists of. And so it does take a lot of effort to make sure that the quality of care that you're delivering in all of those different locations is very high. And how you measure that and how you think about high quality care in all those places is going to be a little bit more complicated and a little bit more nuanced. And we talk a lot about parity and wanting parity globally in those pieces, but I think it's also important to make sure that we realize that parity may not all look exactly the same. It may look different in different locations, but really the goal there is to be most effective, like equally effective and equally supportive to all of those populations versus cookie cutter and it all looking exactly the same. And I do think it is important to be able to trust that the providers that you're working with in those places and the leaders that you're working with across the globe understand that and understand that you can't just use a centralized team to deliver all of the care across the world. And you can't expect individuals who aren't part of those communities to really know all of the cultural, the socio-political sort of impacts and experiences that are going on there, and how that should change your care in a very culturally responsive way. So it's just incredibly important.
I agree. And I'm glad that you brought up the concept of parity or equity, as we think more globally. And for us, we've changed the language to be more about inclusivity and making sure that we have a clear understanding of what it means, non-US. And so, there are certain parameters that, we're looking at in the US that are not quite relevant in other locations, right? Around the world, there are still some basic needs that we're still finding within our policies, as we go through health renewals on an annual basis, that we have to challenge our vendor partners to go after, to the extent that the landscape allows for those to be edited. And so we really had to work very closely with our local partners, HR, as well as our colleagues around the world, to say, where do we want to be, as an organization? What are the standards that we think are minimal for us across the organization that resonate, but uniquely in a way that reflects our values, but reflect what the local landscape is? And then collected and did an inventory just to see where we were around the world, and said, okay, in 50 plus countries, this is where we are for some, where we think we are at parity, as you mentioned, around those standards. And this is where we are going to be red for a while because the landscape does not allow for it. But where are some of those things that we can, as things continue to develop, push the envelope a little bit if we can, and if we can work with those providers. And I really love what you said earlier, Bihar, about language. My God, so critical. And we rolled out a resiliency app to complement the global EAP program that we have. And as you know, what EAP represents for us in the US, it's definitely not necessarily the way the program is being utilized in other countries, right? There are many more challenges, including, physical, environmental challenges that oftentimes, require for us to address crisis management in a very different way. And so when we launched the resiliency application, we worked very closely with the provider because we knew we just couldn't send it in English, right? We were operating in some places where, simple Chinese would have been understood, or it had to be Portuguese, but with the nuance in Brazil, right? And so, and in Latin America, we had to find a way to get to a middle ground because Spanish is not spoken exactly the same everywhere. And so we really wanted to make sure, and of course we had France. We have Disneyland in Paris, of course, in France. And so we really took our time before we did that global launch to work with that provider and say, what's your roadmap around language? And they were willing to partner with us and get to that so that we would have a prayer for success with the application.
Okay, thank you. It's just great to talk about the challenges because that's an opportunity to then address them, right? And so many of you have shared what you've been doing around that, and that's what it's about, right? It's about learning from others and then applying that in your organization. So that's great. I know we've just got a few minutes left here, but the one thing that has come up throughout the conversation is around managerial support. And so it's like, how do you get that leadership engagement? How do you get support for what it is that you're looking to do or that that the business needs or that your employees are expecting from the organization? And so, I'll start with Nadine, but of course, everybody else jump in. Any additional thoughts around how to best do that?
Yeah, I think we have to listen to our people managers' needs very well. And we've actually done that and asked them what's, from your point of view, the biggest challenges for the future. And they said, reorganizations within companies change and the expectations from employees, and that also that includes well-being as well. And so we do have several trainings focusing on well-being, mental health, and I think the most effective ones are the ones that give really practical guidelines or allow them to gain their own experiences in having well-being conversations, for example, through role plays. And what's also very important, I think, is, and it's a phenomenon I think everyone in people and culture knows. We're sending our people managers through leadership programs, and the trainings are excellent, but then the things they've learned are not being implemented in their day-to-day practices. And so I think to have a routine with them after the trainings where they can exchange experiences, they can speak about challenges, or they can even bring in very specific situations they were facing in their teams and ask for support and even some kind of coaching, that really, really helps. And on the other hand, I wanted to elaborate a little bit on what Baha said before, on kind of connecting the dots in terms of data, because we have, I think a lot of us know that survey fatigue. We have discussed a lot about that internally this year and last year. And so we had a leadership survey, but what we've done is we have kind of integrated that into the training so that it doesn't really feel like a survey. And we have spoken to many different HR and people and culture functions prior to designing the survey. And we have tried to come up with questions and content for that survey that would allow us to have these correlations with other people and culture programs, for example, our general leadership program, and that would allow us to, for example, see if it's beneficial that people managers run through our general leadership program and then a deep dive in well-being, or if it's more of a duplication. And so that worked really, really well. But in terms of the first bit that I've mentioned around change, I think there is a lot that needs to be done in that area, because there will always be change. And even more if we think about things like AI and stuff like that influencing our day-to-day business in the future. I do think we need a bigger focus on organizational well-being. There is actually a really great study from William Fleming from the Oxford University. I don't know if anyone of you has read it, but he made a really good comment and said, we risk continuing a cycle of expanding mental health services without taking steps to reduce the needs for them. And so I think, it's really, really important to look at not only the individual, but also the organization as a total and see what we can do to really, address that and promote well-being very holistically.
I love this, Nadine. Summarized perfectly. Also, you reminded me when we go to a rebranding for our wellbeing program, we created some new catchy frames for all the business leaders and senior executives to associate wellbeing with maybe more digestible way. And we created some terminology around wellbeing is not fluffy. So everybody's now learned after they say wellbeing is not fluffy, or we are your partner. We want to be a catalyst to your success. We are your partners. So we are partnering, we are collaborating in this. It's another term we try to teach them. Another one is what we can measure, we can manage. So there are some really good actual phrases around well-being going on around branding, so that leaders see us as their driving force for success and helping their workforce to be healthy and successful in that way. So there is a strong relationship. And every quarter we are meeting with senior executives and our sponsors to give them their stack ranking. So it calls a little bit competition. I'm not encouraging everyone to do this competition. Not every culture is up to it, but our leaders really, really like it. Actually seeing what countries are the winners, what is the biggest improvement countries actually this quarter, what is the contribution to their success metrics and performance, and what are the goals and where they are. So making that actually speaking their language helped us a lot to get their buy-in and be our partners in this journey.
Yeah, I would echo that in that showing leaders the actual data, so that right there sort of solidifies your business case, in that they can see, for us, for instance, in Canada, what are the mental health disability for them, something that says, oh yes, we do need to step up and take action. And we have a very supportive leadership team here, but I think just showing them the data, knowing what it is, goes a long way to not only them participating in trainings and taking advantage of resources, but encouraging their teams to do so as well. So I think showing them the actual data that can resonate with them is really important.
Amazing.
So Chris, I see you joined us. Welcome back.
Yeah.
I know we're almost out of time. We always like to give people an opportunity to maybe make any final comments, et cetera. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to ask everyone, well, firstly, great conversation. I forgot that I was even I was like audience member for so long. It was so enjoyable listening to the conversation. I was just going to ask everyone, we covered so much, but what would be each of your parting pieces to take away? Or, what have you learned from the conversation from your peers and what you're taking away from this conversation? And then we'll say goodbye. Who should we start off with first? Dana, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think my parting information, and I don't think we really touched on this, but I think as we look at mental health and into the future, one of the things that I think we all need to be cognizant of as organizations is we do a lot of focus on our people, but we also need to focus on sort of our spaces, where our individuals are working at those workspaces, because if you're all familiar, you may or not be, but with the Netflix documentary, Live to 100, Secrets of the Blue Zones, we actually trademarked Blue Zone buildings. And this is sort of the premise that we can impact our team members' mental and physical well-being by improving and making our office spaces bluer. So there's, I think, this notion that, yes, we've always been on the people, but let's also look at our spaces and how can we have those impact team member mental health and well-being as well.
I love that. This is a great, perfect opportunity for us to also reimagine how our workspaces, right? I had a conversation recently where I saw some research around even having a 30% reduction in oxygen levels can make your decision making 50% like slower to make a decision. Like there's some real research coming out around some of these effects on people in the workplace as well. So I love that. Baha?
Yeah, my takeaways around safe spaces, healthy communication and collaboration, multidisciplinary collaborations or departmental collaborations that I'm seeing from every panelist. They are doing an amazing job collaborating and partnering with different executive levels or functions. That is my takeaway, to continue that collaboration internally in my organization and hoping to have more collaboration within the Wellbeing space with all these panelists and other people to contribute to our space. This is a collective effort, and I think we are going to create a beautiful picture all together at the end of the day.
Oh, I love that. That was great. Pascale?
I will echo those words. And what I would add is that I think most of us on the panel either have well-being within our job responsibilities or remit or title, but we have to recognize that it's not just up to us, right? It's really a collective effort. We have to be able to collaborate and reach out, whether it's to individuals on the real estate side, as Dana mentioned, or talk to other individuals, whether it's social responsibility, work with the community, work with our vendors, and more broadly, embrace the concept that it's a shared ownership in order to truly embed a culture of well-being within your organization.
Olivia?
Yeah, I think I would kind of echo that piece where I would say this is a really complex task ahead of us, especially when we're thinking globally and we're thinking about very large scale organizations. But we're kind of all in this together. I think we have so much where we can learn, and when we support each other, that we can make such a huge impact in so many people's lives. And it really is possible on a global level, and it really is possible for all of those individuals to make a difference, not only in those workers, but in the work that they're doing, and in the quality of the care that they receive.
Amazing. And Bernie, last but not least, we started with you, Bernie. We're going to go full 360 and end with you.
Wait a minute, Nadine, what's your final comment?
Oh, sorry, Nadine.
That's okay. I'm just doing my job
Nadine.
here, Chris. Just doing my job. Go ahead.
This is why you're moderating, Bernie.
I actually don't have a lot to add to all the brilliant words of the other panelists. I think I really loved that bit around, data-driven well-being strategies and trying to speak the language of the business to have a better collaboration within the same time acknowledging all the local cultures and the local sensitivities around well-being. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, not more to add from my side. Thanks.
And then I'll just add, Chris, as all the attendees have been so fortunate today to really hear from some of the best in the business, right? And in our industry, I mean, this has just been the highest level of expertise and sharing of stories. And so it's been a pleasure for me. And also, if we can just get everybody in the panel to smile, because one thing I noticed is everybody has a great smile. And that's a nice well-being moment to end for me anyway as well. So thanks for this opportunity today, Chris. I'll turn it back to you.
No worries. That's our snapshot for our LinkedIn picture. We're going to put on there now. Well, thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. Thank you, Bernie, for moderating, to all of our amazing panelists. We appreciate wherever you are in the world for tuning in. As many of the panelists said, we're all in this together, and it's the ripple effect of these conversations that impact the lives of millions of people, which is why we do this. So thank you for everyone that's tuned in, and make sure you share this. Tagging colleagues, share it with people on LinkedIn as well. For us, we want to share all of this knowledge and experience and help as many people as possible. Obviously, special thank you to our friends at Lyra Health for supporting us and bringing this panel together. Apart from that, we'll be back on May the 2nd for the next panel, where we're going to be talking about how employee recognition and culture shapes tomorrow's resilient workplaces. So apart from that, wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you.